Hey, folks, welcome to the Project Speakers Podcast, a collaboration between the Project Controls Expo and the Project Chatter Podcast. I'm Val Matthews, and together with Dale Foong, he's over there somewhere, we're delighted to host the show.
I
Hey,
am
Dale.
here somewhere, Val. I'm right here in front of you. I'm almost next to you, virtually.
Almost.
But yeah, hi folks. It's amazing. Is this number three, I think? This is amazing.
Yeah.
It is number three. And what an exciting collaboration between the Expo and Project Chatter. I'm really excited to meet another speaker for the Expo, Val.
Me too, mate. I think this is, we're getting closer and closer every month to the actual expo. So let's get into it. Before we do, though, you should check out projectcontrolexpo.com and check out projectchatterpodcast.com for more podcasts. All the links for the show notes and the show notes, sorry, will be in those podcasts and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast player. And don't forget, this is live. Now, on this episode, we are joined by Mr. Martin Murphy, who will be speaking about why projects go wrong, a nearly Spanish onion at the Project Controls Expo virtual this year. Welcome, Martin. Thanks for joining the show, mate.
Really a great pleasure to be with you guys. It's a bit nervous, I must admit, but anyway, we're among friends.
Exactly. You are in good hands, Martin. We will look
Yes,
after you. But before we unpeel the layers of this Spanish onion, let's get into your bio. Dale?
Yep.
I love how you turned opinion into onion, Val. Only you can do that. But I love the layer analogy as well.
The layers.
In the famous words of Shrek, ogres are like onions, they have layers as well. Anyway, let's jump into it. Martin Murphy has more than 31 years of experience working with multinational companies and participating in high-profile international projects such as the Petronas Towers in Malaysia and the Panama Canal extension. He has a degree in building from the University of Ulster in Northern Ireland and is also a PMP. He is a director with Hill International in Spain, dealing especially with industrial manufacturing and technological projects. Martin has extensive experience in claims and risk management, and in his career has undertaken various roles with responsibility for the planning and cost control aspects of various building, civil, and industrial projects worldwide. Since 1992, he has been working as project manager and in the planning and project control departments of Spanish construction and consulting companies, dealing with claims and controlling time, cost, and risk elements of projects in Spain, Europe, and Latin America. Martin has been appointed as expert on numerous occasions and has also testified. He has been a university and business school lecturer and Hill trainer around the world for over 20 years. He is fluent in Spanish. Welcome to the show, Mr. Martin Murphy. How are you feeling?
Thank you very much. A lot better after listening to all that spiel. No, I just seem very old, guys. That's the only thing. It's just very old. Yes.
It is an amazing bio. Unfortunately, Val and I are not fluent in Spanish. I think Val might know a few words.
I'm getting there.
But he's not.
That's the most important one.
It is the most important
absolutely.
one.
I don't drink it, but I know it's like.
It is important indeed. So a very, very intriguing topic indeed. Why projects go wrong, a nearly Spanish opinion. So let's start with that first. Why nearly Spanish?
Well, I think an honorific Spanish person. I've been here for 30 years in Spain. My wife's Spanish. Before I worked in London. I'm from Northern Ireland, worked in London. And I've been here since 1991. So my issue probably is more with English. If you see me hesitating, it's not for the lack of words, it's for the lack of the right word in English. I spend 95% of my time speaking Spanish. So the nearly Spanish opinion is me feeling that I have, I have a right to, if you like, have an opinion about the Spanish and coming from a British sort of, as we call it, Anglo Saxon background from Spain. We call it an Anglo Saxon background. I do a lot of lecturing and also training with companies, not the first tier companies, but the second tier companies, Spanish companies going into the foreign markets to try to get their mindset into it's a different ball game out there. It's not what we're used to, and I think there's a lot of good things in both cultures. That probably a good joint venture of those cultures is a good way of getting projects done.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And obviously, we don't want to give away what you're going to be presenting at the virtual expo, but you're hinting at this is quite a cultural spin on it.
Absolutely.
Are there some technical nuances as well that people can expect, or is it mainly cultural, behavioral?
Well, no. I would like to get into why my take on why I think projects go wrong, again, I always try to I've been, if you like, in a lot of projects in Latin America as well and in Europe and that, but I probably have my head to the grindstone a lot and haven't looked outward too much. I've done more looking now in the last few days at your podcast than a lot of other things, I must admit. But what I do believe is that there is a mixture of why projects go wrong, and I would like to add a little bit of project controls, plus I think a lot of contracts management part, and I think they're very intrinsically linked. When I've done claims, it's been very much based on good document control and good scheduling. If there's good document control and good scheduling, you will have a good potential for a well-documented claim, right? If you don't, you have to invent things, So on one hand, we've got a cultural issue, and that's how the Spanish and the Latin Americans, but I would say Spanish particularly, look at tools, look at contracts, how they perceive a project, versus a more Anglo Saxon, if you like, as we call it, approach, a more legalistic, a more claims oriented approach. The Spanish approach is much less claims oriented. It has taken the Spanish a lot to get up to speed. When I was in Malaysia in the Petronas towers, it was a Spanish contractor. I was working with a Spanish contractor. We'd done the fit out for both towers, and I was schedule manager there. And it was 96, and we were innocent, poor innocent contractors, want to do a job, and suddenly everybody was hitting us on the head with a contract every day. You had to look at the contract clause to answer the question properly. Please let me speak to my lawyer before I say yes or no. So that whole culture shock is part of it, and how we see contracts, how we tend to approach projects, and that's part of what I would like to talk about. And I think the Spanish mentality, a lot of things, and the Southern European mentality is probably we hit ourselves on the back a lot. We do an awful lot of self-harm, thinking that we're not good enough, blah blah. The more I've traveled, I honestly feel this. The more I travel, the more I see the value of the Spanish or Latin or South European more culture of go, just get the job done. And of course, there's a risk with that, is how you get the job done, right? But that's one of the points I would like to make. There's a good side to that as well as a bad side. The bad side is, just don't hold me back. I'm running to get the job done, but maybe I'm not going in the right direction. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I've worked in Germany as well, and it's the complete opposite. The complete opposite. It's you need to have 65 pieces of paper before you do anything, and you can talk yourself into never getting anything done. You know what I mean? I don't mean it in a very generic sort of a funny way,
Yeah.
And in Spain we tend to jump into it before we think, well, what exactly do we want to do? And there's some good halfway house there. And one of the things I wanted to mention, I was just looking at, I saw one of your podcasts talking about rail signaling, and one of the issues, and that, and I've worked, funnily enough, I've done a lot of consultancy work, and I just gotten to finish work with a Spanish rail manufacturer, train rolling stock manufacturer for the last, so doing projects of maybe 15 projects we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, of maybe 15,000 activities per project, right?
Wow.
That type of size of schedule, right? So we're talking about a couple of €1,000 million of a project, or another one could be less, or 300 million or 400 million. And the whole design fabrication, because all these trains are built to order. So they're projects, they're not series fabrication. So all of these things, you see the industries, and you see that they can be controlled with good practices, independently of the culture,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for that. I want to bring Val in there because he's nodding there in the background and he's traveled a bit in his time as well, Val. Do you have any comments and thoughts around what Martin's saying there, particularly around culture as well?
I do, and we've had a few podcasts, and thanks for listening, Martin. We appreciate it. But we've had a few podcasts where we had talked about culture being one of the key kind of elements of a successful project, and I think this is great that you're talking about this at the next Project Controls Expo virtual, where I'd love to see the difference between what we do in the West, primarily the Anglo Saxon cultures, and how we actually look at them. And I think you're right. I think we are hard on ourselves. We hammer ourselves commercially as well. And I was going to ask a real brief question around, if you can give it away, contract structuring. Is that different in the way they do it in like Spanish or Latin America? How do they structure their contracts? Because arguably, it's how you start a project, which really determines a lot of how you finish it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got those kind of, not mandates, but those collaborative forces in that commercial arrangement, it can be very difficult later on, especially when it comes to claims, as you know. What's your point on that?
It's funny. It's one of the things that I in the whole thing, but it's not giving anything away. It's basically there are no standard contracts in Spain. Full stop. Okay. Zero. Literally zero. It's not an opinion. No, there are no standard contracts in Spain. So why are there no standard contracts in Spain? Because people tend not to be too worried about the contract. If you like, culturally, a contract in Spain is a threshold. It's a bit like, I always say it's a bit like getting married, particularly in a civil wedding. You go and you sign the register. You're signing a contract. You read out your obligations, at least here in Spain. You read out the civil code, with a difference to the religious wedding. You read out the civil code of your obligations and da-da-da. And in Spain, it's like, okay, I just got married. Now I'm married. That's it. The contract has been signed. I'm now married. And the equivalent, I would say, bringing it into my sort of speak, is in the UK, someone goes and gets the civil code, sticks it in the fridge in the morning. And every time you go into the kitchen and the thing's not taken up, you say, what about this mutual understanding and the help and the collaborative and all this and all your obligations? It's like being reminded every day of the contract you sign. This is the difference. We sign a contract in Spain. It's a threshold that you cross to get the job, and you get the job done. And this is one of the things I wanted. I was just looking at the rail, bring it back to the rail thing, and how public works, for instance, in Spain don't have project managers. Okay, full stop. They don't have project managers. They have a technical department within the ministry, and they have a technical assistant, which normally is a big engineering company that not only do the site, the quality, if you like, the resident engineer type role, but also all of the management of the contract. And the management of the contract is based upon very much an objective-based thing. You finished the job. And there was, at least prior to the crisis, unfortunately, the crisis in 2008 has left us all a little bit more looking at the last cent and a bit, saving the cent and losing the euro or the pound, and we have brought it down to a more aggressive mentality. But I would say that the Spanish approach is much more efficient when things go generally well. And I was just thinking about the high-speed rail, just for the hell of it. High-speed rail. The Spain has got 3,400 kilometers of high-speed rail. It's, at the moment, there's another 1,200 kilometers under construction. They were rolling out 200 kilometers per year for about 15 years in Spain. And it doesn't get into the press. It doesn't happen. Nothing. There's no big deal. Or it's not as if Spain is a nice flat. It's some very challenging technical issues. But the big five contractors here that are all over the world now, Australia particularly, you've got a lot of the biggies, the Spanish ones there. They have got a sort of an understanding with the authorities in that there will be a claim at the end, but there will be a tendency to settle it within a relatively amicable environment, because the contractor does an awful lot of value engineering. He finishes off a design that the client probably hasn't paid enough money to do completely out. So he is already, even if it's not an EPC contract, which the contracts has been don't tend to be. Every contract, obviously, outside of Spain, nearly any large job is an EPC contract, which is no guarantee of anything, really. But exactly, it's just a bigger claim, if you like. But the Spanish mentality is getting the job done, and then showing your value in getting the job done technically. And technically, the Spanish, I think, are very, very capable. In terms of management of the process, or the process in itself, that's where the weakness is. This is where my analogy when I give a lot of classes about this is, I say the Spanish are great footballers. They're very good footballers, right? And they go out to play football out foreign. Not so much now, but before they were really good footballers. And suddenly it takes them a year to realize that it's a rugby game. And you've got these huge, big guys that are leveling them on the field. And they've got this funny ball, and there's no goalkeeper, and they're prepared for football. And that's the culture shock. It's less now, but it's the culture shock that I lived in the Petronas Towers. And we were really shell-shocked for a year until we got up to a game. And we started, having parties every 1,000 RFIs that we were producing for the client, and every et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we started hitting back. It took us a year to learn, but we started hitting back. And we came out with the shirt on our back, miraculously, practically, But that was the culture shock. We went out to play football, and we didn't realize that people were playing rugby, And that's where the project controls come in. For instance, one of the big things is in Hill in Spain. We use P6 all the time. We use it full stop. It seems to be the standard or relative standard. But there's an awful lot of people still use one of the other ones that come with a package that we have all on our computers, right? And they use it because the importance. I've had to congratulate a client, a contractor, a job that I was supervising. 105 million euro data center, 16 months design and build, handed over, perfect quality. I had to congratulate him on doing the job in spite of the schedule. He done the schedule for us. Because we were hitting him over the head every month, and he'd done a 2,000 activity. And he says, Martin, it's a waste of time. I get the job done without it. Now, unfortunately, when the rules of the game, you go outside Spain, and the rules of the game completely different, you go into the process world and not the objective world. You're into the process. And if you don't comply with the process, you're dead. And that's sometimes one of our failings. We tend to just go off and act rather than plan, and then act.
Yeah. No, I can see the fusion, I guess, of some of that getting it done culture, which is obviously really, really great. But then a bit of steerage and a bit of direction isn't a bad thing. A bit of a sprinkle of a process here or there. Absolutely. Governance is always a good thing. I'm going to roll back. You got me on one of the things you said. They don't have project managers, and I was blown away by that. So is that something you're going to talk about at the Project Controls Expo as well?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk, one of the things was why projects fail, right? And we all know a lot of things of why projects fail, but I have my own opinion, and it's not, I'd like to get into sort of more strategic reasons and then into sort of detailed reasons of why I think projects fail. But then the upside of that for me was, okay, so what to do about it? Not only, what, and one of the what to do about it was maybe looking at this idea that, for instance, an example of this was Polish, before the World Cup that was in Poland, in Ukraine and Poland, there's a huge infrastructure development done in Poland. And the rules of the game when the tendering was on was basically very much price oriented, very much low price. And the contractors get in that. The Spanish are accustomed to that, hitting it low and then getting back, crawling back on the job. But unfortunately, the tendering, which was not probably as robust in terms of selecting the quality over price or time over price or method over price, that was accompanied by a Germanic control of the project, right? So you've got on one hand a very, let's supposedly fairly open, lax type valuation of the contractors, and then a Germanic, if you like, hitting them on the head every single thing they moved out. So you've got companies that are used to the low price type thing, but they've got a more flexible way of managing the claims, the change management on site, right? So the two tend to work. The rules of the game tend to work. But when you have one rule that's one type and the other rule, which is a completely different, you had an awful lot of them projects were abandoned by I think some of the Irish contractors, the Chinese contractors abandoned the projects because they were losing too much money, because it wasn't the expectation between what I tendered for and the way it's been managed. So if you get the rules of the game being relatively a flat playing field, if you like, or a known rules, I think it's always a good point. Now, the only problem is when those rules of the game are too strict, and this is where I see the culture, like the FIDIC culture, in my opinion, and this is where nearly most contracts that are done outside or any international arena for infrastructures tend to be FIDIC in one way or another. I see where, for instance, London and the Olympics was a huge game changer, because there was a different focus on risk, on who assumes risk, who takes ownership, and who runs the risk and who puts the cost, and a more fairer way of dealing with issues. And I think that's one of the things where the like of the NEC contracts, which I don't know that well because we don't use them in Spain, but they seem to be more oriented towards a much more, if you like, a fairer approach. And this is one of the things I would like to speak about, is how I see the approach of, I'm not saying the Spanish approach, but the mentality of a more flexible way of doing projects. And I think it's effective.
Martin, I love the sports analogies.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking there that, perhaps if, we're playing football, the fluid, free-flowing football style of the Spanish versus some rigid rugby nation, whoever you want to pick, South Africa.
For instance.
Are we perhaps maybe not playing football or rugby? Are we playing Gaelic football or Aussie rules rather?
Aussie rules, why not?
Exactly.
There you go.
Why not?
But then the problem becomes, I guess, is that both sides don't understand the rules because they haven't played a lot of it. And then it got me thinking, using that analogy, do we have the right mix? Because as you were saying, if everyone understands the rules, so if you are sort of in charge of a Spanish project with all Spanish stakeholders, everyone understands the rules of engagement. And so you can have a more flexible contract and it's all good. But then as soon as you start mixing it, and there are quite a few partnerships,
absolutely,
between the Spanish
absolutely
companies and the British. And it's interesting to note that mix, and I'm sure we've seen some of it before on live projects, how it doesn't always work.
Absolutely.
Is there the right mix when it comes to this melting pot of various cultures and locations? Or is it a case of, well, we need to find out what works best for that specific project rather than trying to make everyone fit into a box?
Yeah, I think that JVs are always a problem, independently of the cultures. I think even in the one culture, any JV is always a problem because there's a separation of power and there's a dual head or triple head or whatever. And that one of the things that I feel, and like I've been project manager for my sins in a previous life. I think I've been project manager for one of the skyscrapers in Madrid, Norman Foster's skyscraper for Repsol, an oil company. Yeah, a big project, 350 million euro budget. And one of the things I felt was authority. If you have a client with authority and you have that authority delegated to a team, i.e. a project manager or whoever you want to call them, I don't really care, then authority, and when I say authority, I mean signature, authority to sign off on changes and not committees. The opposite of authority is committees. And committee-run projects are nearly doomed to failure. So the mix originally comes from the client. For me, it's authority. You have got you haven't got this serpent, the multi-headed client that are coming with hundreds of different requests, and everybody has an option or to ask for something else. Wouldn't it be great to have this, this type of thing? For me, someone who's authority, the mix on the projects, I feel you need a translator. There's a book relating to couples. It's called The Men Were Born on Mars, Women on Venus. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. And this book basically says that they were on two different planets. And the only thing is that they knew that there were two different planets, so they had translators. The problem was when they came down to Earth, they think they're on the same planet, they think they're the same civilization, and they actually speak two different languages. The problem is they don't have a translator. The same happens, in my opinion, with each culture. You need people that know both to act as a hinge between two people that are, one is talking about rugby and the other one's talking about football. And literally it takes a year of nearly wanting to understand the other one to actually get to gel together. And when I say this, someone knows that they mean that, or I mean this, and you're not double thinking, you're not thinking where they're coming from, etc. And that whole culture thing in JVs particularly, and even not with JV, but someone, a Spanish company or another company coming to a Spanish environment, or a Spanish company going to another, which really it has hardly happened. No company has come into Spain. None. Zero. Because, I don't know why, because there's no big UK company. The German company is actually Spanish. so most of the big ones are now owned by Spanish. So, but I think one of the things for me is there needs to be some translator in that who wants to help and wants to help people understand. One of the things that we suggest always when we give contracts management courses or project controls courses to our own people is training. For me, training is everything. You need to get the team sat down at the beginning, and you need to start studying the contract. You need to start studying what we expect, what are the expectations, the schedule, and you need to get people to run over the contract. One of the things I wanted to do in the exposition, what I do in September, is talk about what are the important words in a contract. In FIDIC, what are the important words? If I needed to know the important things to look up in a red book, what would I look for? So that's the thing you need to actually learn. And once people start getting together and learning, a class literally of the project team, get them together, start learning the contract, get someone to coach them, to get them to coach and talk about project controls, talk about the importance of the schedule. The schedule for me is the big thing that's forgotten with a lot of people. People understand money. Yep. Money's got a great bottom line. You can add up a column in Excel and it adds up. Time doesn't. And I saw one of your your podcasts on earned value, and people are trying to aggregate all these activities and see what the effect is of all this movement every month, and there's no bottom line.
Yeah,
there's no bottom line, and that's the huge challenge for scheduling. Money, anybody understands this has gone up by 3%. It all adds up. I can anybody, even a managing director, can check the total of a column. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a schedule is like, whoa.
No, that's awesome insight. I just wanted to ask you one more before I hand to Val for the final question or two. You brought up time, and I was thinking about the triple constraint and how culture comes into it. And I had to ask you, does the whole mañana cultural aspect come into it when in the Spanish realm?
I love Spain. I live in Madrid. I will be pulled out of Spain feet first if they get me, because I'm Spanish to all intents and purposes. As I say, my English is a bit defective sometimes. But unfortunately, there's still a bit of that. Time and money, cause and effect, is a bit of an issue. Cause and effect, I always say, you need to understand that cause and effect. If this happens, and that happens. It's not if this happens, it doesn't really matter, because don't worry, sort of mañana. You'll not hear mañana. You'll hear mañana said in Mexico.
Yeah.
Ahorita in Mexico is ahorita.
Okay.
Is right now. which will be within a few days. But mañana is not said, but mentally, people, so much so, as I say, I still have to do a lot of training and scheduling.
No, that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. So it's subliminal. It's telepathic. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Just on your translator point before I give to Val, if anyone needs a fantastic translator, I think we've got one right here, Val. So there we are. Perfect. Val, over to you.
Perfect. No, it's great. I was actually laughing when you said that, mañana, because my wife's Chilean, Martin.
All right.
And, for the life of me, we've been married almost 10 years. And one of the things I learned really early on, being English, was that we were on different time scales, and I couldn't figure it out. She was always late by about 2 hours. I go, we got dinner, and she would say, no, I'm on Hispanic time. It's different. And she'd probably kill me if she hears this, but luckily she's not into project management. So, but I truly appreciate the idea of time being kind of still a mystic art, even in the Spanish and the Latin American countries, and how we deliver projects. And that's why I think we need more time project managers, those people that can craft a schedule and build up those estimates. I think they're really valuable. And I was just going to leave you with one question from me was, in your expo, and I don't want you to give too much away, but are you going to talk about the various different stages or phases of a project? Because they are different animals depending on the size of the project. Obviously, if you're delivering a little $100,000 project, it's probably not so bad. But if you're delivering $100 million or more, it can get very complex and complicated. And so, I love how you mentioned education and getting people educated. Oh, great. That to me alone is a great idea. And it should be enforced, I think. And, something like during the mobilization period, the teams come together, they learn together, learn all the ins and outs, all the processes and the assumptions and dependencies, and then you start on a really good foot. But are you going to go into some of the other various stages?
My idea was, my focus for the presentation was to think of, I didn't want to go into too much of the political stroke issues of a project. I was thinking more of, we're in the process of tendering onwards, right? And we only suffer the effects of what happened before, right? But it's right. So the project is mature, right? I'm not in this presentation, at least, I'm not thinking really that much upriver. I'm thinking much more tangible. We've just got awarded, and you've got this white look on your face, thinking, "Oh my God, we've been awarded. Who's made a mistake?" And so for me, the idea is, obviously, when we are as project managers, even though my presentation is oriented towards the contractor already, when we're project managers and we're brought on before the architect's brought on, when I give my classes, I normally say, right, look, we have a schedule in the initial stage, we've got a schedule in the design stage, we've got a schedule in the procurement phase, and we've got a schedule. All are part of the same schedule, but the focus completely different. The detail is completely different, etc. And then how it evolves. So I can add, actually, Val, but just with that suggestion, given that I still have a bit of time before I have to get it all prepared, I'll bring a bit of the whole sort of phases of the contract and how we should look at things in the different phases, because it does evolve. And as I say, one of the big challenges for me is I have a schedule, and it's not necessarily mega projects. Like the Panama Canal was a mega project, and I was on it at the beginning. But for the most normal projects here, we've got 300, 500 million has been the biggest that we have done in Spain, right? But how to get a schedule from 50 activities the first day of the project to get an overall scope to 16,000 activities 1.5 years later without losing the traceability. That's the challenge. And that requires thought and planning and making sure. And that's how I focus my internal and even when I do project controls courses. So I'll touch on that in the conference that we do later on in the year. But as I say, for me, I am passionate as well about. I think I'm very Spanish in that. I've got very Spanish, but the only thing I've got and the food in wanting to do things better. And one of the things, for instance, we're doing now, literally at this moment in time, I give classes in a BIM master in Madrid, and we get some of the best students into our company. So we do planning in 4D, right? And that for me was one of a big project we had in Germany to explain the schedule to a very intelligent client on a video was just an incredible, like with a detailed schedule and a detailed model of 15 buildings. To explain that on a video instead of looking at bars was an incredible first for me. The project director stopping the video, bringing it back. No, why are you doing this? No, because we had it on family. It was a huge step forward. You know, these things for me, not only training, but also the technology is incredible. And I feel it's funny. There's nothing in the FIDIC contract, if I recall. There's no word talking about obligatory training, group sessions, lessons learned after every phase. Obligatory. You need to get people. One of the big problems on sites is the client doesn't want to get them off site to get training. So the client won't pay you if you've got your people off site. Why not put it into a contract? Why not oblige people to train them on site, stop work for 4 hours and get up to speed with the best practice, get the team together? Wouldn't that be a great idea?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think we were both nodding violently in the background. And I do think BIM is a great concept as well. I think, like you said before, it is a translator. We said we need more translators. And I think visual management, we know, is one of those things. And it's incredible because BIM has been around for a while, but it is getting traction. And it's great to hear stories like that, Martin. Thank you so much. Dale, over to you, mate.
Thank you, Val. Yeah, I love your passion, Martin, and it's probably that melting pot of Irish and Spanish passion as well, because both cultures are very, very passionate. But I want to say we've peeled back a layer or two, but we've left enough there, I think, for the expo. And you know, listeners, get yourself onto the virtual expo. Martin will be uncovering and bearing all.
Absolutely. God knows what a sight.
But thank you very much, Martin. It's been a great chat, and just listening to you and what you're gonna sort of entice the listeners with heading into the virtual expo. But that is sadly all the time we have on this episode. Before we go though, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave the listeners with?
No, I think just one thought. If you're not happy in your work, leave it. The passion and the happiness have to be linked. And for me, life's too short. The pandemic has shown us that life's too short. You need to be passionate. You need to love what you do. If you don't love what you do something else. That's my thought.
Amazing thoughts indeed. Thank you so much, Martin. So
Thank
folks,
you, guys.
That is all we have time for on this episode, but you can catch Martin at the Project Controls Expo Virtual. For more information, check out projectcontrolexpo.com and projectchatterpodcast.com. Don't forget to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast player and YouTube so you don't miss the next one. A big, massive thank you to Mr. Martin Murphy, and thank you all for listening. From me and Val, it's bye for now.
Thank you very much.